All right, you're going up to your enlarger. Today you're working on number 2 maybe. Let's see how this thing works. Before you even get to your enlarger station, always make sure you bring with you your binder that has your negatives, if you're printing from negatives, and your personal folder that has your photo paper. You should have your own personal folder that has a black bag. That's where we keep our photo paper. We don't ever take that paper out when the lights are turned on. We do not take that paper out when the enlarger is turned on, because then it will immediately ruin it. We wait until it's that magical time to print those photos to take your paper out. But you need to bring it in, because there's nothing more annoying than getting everything set up and you're like, oh wait, but I don't have any photo paper. You will need a piece of mat board often. And then you always need to make sure at the end of class, when you're done, that you don't forget to bring those things back out and put them onto your class shelf. Next, the easel. This drawer down below carries your easel, filters, and cardboard. So this is called a glass easel. This is what we use to make contact sheets when we have a full sheet of negatives. Out of your binder, you take the negatives, you put them underneath this on top of a piece of photo paper to make a contact sheet, which we'll later do. Don't worry about that right now. But we will need this actually to make our first prints with photograms. So everything will lay down here on top of a piece of photo paper and it will turn into an image. It's so cool. This right here is a print holder, so that when you have your photo paper ready and you want to make a really nice 5x7, a 4x6, or a 2x3, all you do is you get your cut paper, line it up with those, shut it, with the image of course exposed onto it, and you get a very nice precise image. Same thing with 8x10, so that you don't have to guess on whether or not something's crooked or straight. It is done for you, okay? So let's take a look to see how this thing works, right? It's a pretty big machine here that we have to figure out, with lots of knobs and things that we probably don't even know how they work. And then there's some signs around to make sure we don't forget things, right? Like this right here. What is that? We will find out soon. First things first is the control panel, okay? AKA the timer, right? We always turn this on by flipping the switch that's up here at the top, okay? Now, with the timer, it's we have a couple different things that we really need to pay close attention to. First off, the most annoying thing is this right here. Always press this off button as soon as you turn it on. Because one thing that happens is, let's say that you decide, okay, I am going to do my 3 second exposure. Boom. Okay, I pressed it off so that you couldn't hear it. Okay, now you're gonna hear it. Ready? There. See? It's the most annoying thing in the world. Please turn off the tone. No one likes to hear it. It's annoying. All right, so first thing, that's always what you do, okay? Now, the timer, as you saw me moving around, is adjusted with these knobs here. These are called the timer control knobs, okay? These are really important because they adjust the amount of time that the light is coming out of the enlarger onto your photo paper. So it's really important that you get this right and that you're paying close attention to where things are, because there's a big difference between 3.0, that's 3.3 seconds, versus 93 seconds. And so if there's no dot there, that's going to be a lot of time, and probably a ridiculous amount of time that's going to ruin your print. So for the most part, you usually want to have a dot in between, or if you're in the double digits, like, you know why you're there, because you really need that amount of time. So just pay close attention to make sure that it's actually the right number. If you want smaller amount of time at 0.3 seconds, you'll hit this right here to get there. If you're ever like stuck and I'm like, can't get to the other one, press that, okay? Or move these around, and that will help you figure out, how much time you need. Now, to actually turn on the enlarger, we press this right here, this button. Doesn't look like anything because the lights are still on. Normally in the dark room, when we're going and rocking at these enlarger stations, we have the lights turned out. And this is how it would look. Again, when this is on, we do not have any photo paper out unless we are set up, everything's ready to go, and then you hit that button to get the light on. But otherwise, everything should be still in your drawers unless you have out your negative carriers. Okay, so today we're only focusing on how this thing works, where things are, nothing else. So here's the amount of light that I'm getting right now is just fixed because I just pressed this button to turn it on. But if I just wanted my 2-second exposure, I'm gonna hit this big button on here, and then you see the numbers moving, and normally that turns out. But because I still have that going on my fixed amount of time, nothing happened. I click this button next to it, okay, and now it's my 2-second exposure. It turned off. It's not ready yet. This is when you go ahead and you load your paper negatives into the carrier. You get everything ready. Once you're ready for that 2-second exposure, you press the bar in the bottom, and so you just got to see a really nice glitchy moment. Sometimes if you don't press these down hard enough, it will expose for like a flash of a second, and then it just gets stuck and nothing happens. So you really have to hold it apparently on this station. So that was a 2-second exposure, but then it got a little bonus extra. This one, there we go. Now that is a better one. So make sure you're really pushing in, okay? Just be careful. Sometimes that button is just a little jammy, like this one apparently. All right, so now you got to see an example of what it looks like when you are, doing an exposure for a certain amount of time with the timer. Otherwise, there's nothing else you really need to see with this timer. When you're done, you always have to turn it off. This is a really expensive control panel. If you leave it on, it completely runs it dead. So please do not leave it on, okay? But to show you some other things, how it works, this right here, okay, dun, dun, dun. Lots to learn, right? Inside of this, of course, is a light bulb in the top. In the back here, this thing that has the scale measurements going up and down, that is the post of the enlarger. Inside of here is a chamber called the housing chamber. Down here we have something called a condenser that condenses the image. Up here is called the negative carrier, okay? And that is what we use to put our negatives inside. So this, called the lens aperture, is going to cast the image that we have inside the negative down here onto our photo paper. It's pretty awesome. Otherwise, we have some knobs that we need to figure out. We have, of course, the bellows here, but we have some really important knobs over here. So when I want to open up my negative and load up a negative, what I do is I actually take this, excuse me, let me move this a little bit. I take this knob up here and I lift it up. Okay, it's the top knob is the one that opens up the negative carrier. Then you can take this out and then you would open it up and load up a negative. We're not going to worry about that right now because we're not using negatives quite yet, but that is for the negative carrier. If you ever feel like there's a huge amount of light coming in, let me turn this on so you can see what that looks like, then you better check and close that so that it's not letting out more light than it's supposed to. Okay. Now, over here, a couple other things. This is what we use to move the enlarger up and down, which will adjust the size of the image, okay, in comparison to this area. So I'm moving this, and it's going up and down, okay, and I keep cranking, and here it goes back up. So using that knob is really important. You're going to do that probably every time you come and print in the darkroom. Just be careful if you turn it too much. It can fall off. It's okay if that happens. You just got to twist it back on. On this side and this side, you'll see some really important knobs that actually help you focus your image so that when you turn off your light and you have an image underneath, okay, you want to pay attention to the edges. Does this look blurry or does this look clear? It's blurry. So that's when you come up here, put your hand on these knobs, and you twist them and turn them. This is the bellows that is controlling this. Twist and turn until the edges look nice and crisp, okay? As you can see, that looks pretty good. But look how much bigger that got, right? That became, I should say, right? Let's use some better English here, Mrs. Chung. Maybe that fits my holder pretty well. Maybe it doesn't. So you have to play around sometimes where I'm moving my enlarger up and down. Maybe I really wanted it to be a smaller print, okay? And then I move my knobs that focus it a little more until I get my crisp and clear edges. It's a game where you have to, there we go, you have to go back and forth between moving it and using your knobs. Does that fit this? No, it doesn't. This would be one that would be a lot more appropriate to something like this. Okay? So there you have it. That is how you use the enlarger station. It's simply a matter of making sure that you come in with the materials you need, loading things up properly, using these knobs together to get a nice focused image, and then of course making sure you have the proper amount of time set up on your timer, tone off, not on, and then making sure that it is on outlet time once you're ready to actually hit the start button and get the right amount of time. The very last thing I want to show you that is actually extremely important, you don't always need to change it, but you should know what this means. This right here is information in regards to what's called the lens aperture, okay? The lens aperture is the hole, and that's what all those little circles are representing, the hole of the lens, right? There it is right there. That is the lens aperture. This controls how much light is coming out because it changes in size depending on the numbers. So right now you can see that the dot at the top is clicked to match 16, F16. As you can see, F16, is it a small hole or a big hole? It's a small one. So when it comes to aperture with cameras and with the enlarger equipment, it's the same. The higher the number, the smaller the aperture hole. Okay, the higher the number, which means if my image is really bright, okay, and it's just looking like so bright, everything's washed out, I would want to come down here because that would take away some light. But on the flip side, if my image is really dark and I need more light to come in, I make it bigger by coming down here to f4 or f3.5 because that is a larger aperture. So that will let in more light. So it can be confusing since the numbers are higher for smaller and the numbers are larger for, smaller for the larger aperture. So it's kind of like opposites. So just remember that visual and that will help you know. We usually say that when you turn on the enlarger, you should turn it all the way to the left and then go 1, 2, 3 clicks from the left. And that will usually land you at F8. F8 is a really good average number to keep your aperture at. It just seems to be that middle of the road number that's just the right amount of light. The last thing that I will share with you is filters. Yeah, in the darkroom, we use filters just like you do with your cell phones. What do filters do on your cell phones? They enhance an image, right? Well, in the darkroom, if you ever get an image that just doesn't seem right, it's too light, or it could be darker, you can play around with using one of these, okay? And it's a filter that you can put right here. That's what that little tray spot is for, in case you've been wondering this entire time. And then you would project your image and you would see how that would affect it. Okay, so that is the last piece of the enlarger station for you to know about. We will get into how to use filters. We will get into figuring out how to make a print on here. We will learn how to load up our negatives all on other days. Today was all about just knowing the parts of the timer, the parts of enlarger, and how to use them, and what to have and what to remember. All right.